Hi everybody, I just wanted to go through a really quick video about using Gianfranco Conti's sentence builders in the classroom. I went to a Gianfranco Conti event or seminar style workshop day in November 2021, and I still use the ideas he talked through with us on that day. I still use them every single day in the classroom. They're so helpful. Anyone that's watching this video will know who Gianfranco Conti is. I'm not going to be telling you anything new, but I'm just going to talk you through how I've been using different levels of challenge with sentence builders in recent weeks and months, and hopefully gives you some food for thought. It's not really barely any of this is my own work. This is stuff that I've taken from different places, but it might be useful to have it in the one place for you. Everyone's seen the sentence builders. Obviously, the most straightforward thing you can do with them is just read out a sentence to get the students to copy it down. That's how I always introduce. For example, in this instance here, we're introducing the preterite tense. This is what I've done with the Year 8 class. And if I want them to see that verb fui for the first time, I make sure it's embedded in language that they already know. So let's say, for example, I'd have this sentence builder on the board. I would read out, hace 2 días fui al cine, dado que llovía, pero mañana quiero ir a la playa. So I would read that out and get them to write it down, either on a mini whiteboard or in the back of their book or something like that, along with me, then get them to practice saying it as well. I think that's one of the key things that I found. Not only is this really good for writing, but I found that you have to get the students to practice speaking along with the sentence builder as well. And then moving the challenge level up a little bit, sometimes what I'll do is I'll read off of it, but I'll just miss words out, and I just get them to write down which words I've missed out. This is particularly good with lower ability groups, and it's training them to keep their eyes on the board. I know that seems like a really basic thing, but we've all had low ability groups that it's just so hard for them to follow things along on the board. So this is a really good way of just training them. So also you don't get them to write down the whole thing, because sometimes by the time, if you've got, let's say for example, a bottom set Year 8 class, by the time you've got them to write down one sentence, they're absolutely spent cognitively. And then you find that the next couple of tasks you do are quite challenging just in terms of managing them. So get them to write less. So for example, I might miss out these words here. So for example, let's say I was doing a different sentence. Hace 2 días fui a la porque hacía tiempo, pero mañana ir al cine. So they should follow that along, and they should just work out which words I've missed out. I'd have to read that 3 or 4 times for them. They're just following it along, and I just want them to write down the words that I've missed out following the sentence grid along there. And as I say, that's really effective with those lower ability groups to train them to get used to dealing with a sentence grid of this size. I think that's quite a good way to approach it rather than throwing them in at the deep end. So that's one thing you can do slightly different. Another thing that I found, this is more with the higher ability level of groups, is read the text out, then read it again, but then remove it from the sentence grid. So for example, I'd read it out once. Hace 2 días fui al cine, dado que llovía, pero mañana quiero ir a la playa. Now I don't want them to write anything at this point. I just want them to follow it along with me. Then I'm going to read it again. I still don't want them to write anything. I'm going to read it again, but I'm going to remove the things I've said as I'm going. Then I want them to write it down. So can they remember it? So, hace 2 días fui al cine, dado que llovía, pero mañana quiero ir a la playa. Right, now I've removed all those. Then I would get them to talk it through with their partner. Can they remember what I've removed from there? So I've read it to them twice. You could read it 3 or 4 times if you wanted to. Then remove it. Then get them to write it. So we're testing their memory there, and then we go through it from there. Another one, which is even higher level of challenge, but again works quite well with those higher ability groups, is just having the first letter of each word. So again, hace 2 días fui al cine, dado que llovía, pero mañana quiero ir a la playa. Again, that's quite an effective one to use with higher ability groups, and it just adds in an extra level of challenge that isn't there if it's just the whole sentence written out. And then the final thing that I quite like to do is get the students to guess what would go in there. So, ayer al cine llovía, quiero ir a la playa. Again, this will probably come later on when they're used to the sentence structures you're working with. But again, for that extra level of challenge in there, It really does keep the students engaged, and the beauty with all of this is it's in a really handy visual grid that helps them to see sentence structures. That is, I think, the beauty of the sentence builders, which is why I believe that these sentence builders are so effective for learning.